This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 1701, 1701, 1701, Han Solo, Solo, a Star Wars Story movie review.
Laser beams, opinions like the seasons on everything you read in comics, movies, games, toys, artists, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek, uniting the world's mightiest heroes. This is...
I'm Adam Murdo.
I'm Shane Kelly.
And I'm Chris Eberly.
I find it very, very ironic, and this is how we're working in already. I find it very ironic that this episode falls on 1701, which is a complete Star Trek reference, and all we're doing is reviewing Solo, a Star Wars Story.
Call it a conflict of fandoms, if you will.
It's not for me. I love them both.
Right.
Here.
We did that in an episode long time ago.
Oh, yeah. It was one of the CGS Great Debates series.
Yeah, that was... And
I remember that one.
Like so many things, I fall in the middle because I love them both for different reasons. There's just nothing bad about either of them in many ways for me. Yeah. Each one has their own little quirky things here and there, but boy, I'll watch both of them till the end of the world.
Shane, I'm right there with you, and in fact, last night I was surfing and Star Trek 6 was on. I couldn't turn away.
I love that one. Oh, God, that's
one of my favorites.
It's fantastic.
That was, the Undiscovered Country?
Yeah.
Yep,
Nicholas Meyer,
Undiscovered Country.
Mayer directed that one as well as Star Trek 2, which
yes, he did.
Is why Star Trek 6 seems so much better than some of the predecessors. Even 5, as much as a lot of people don't like that one, I do. There's a lot I like about it. It gets to a point, and then I'm done. I'll watch it for like the first 45 minutes, the first hour, and then I'm like, all right, that's it. I'm done. But
well, there are parts about 5 I love because I love all the characters. So just watch them interact.
Yeah.
I can still get something out of it.
Yeah.
And the folks listening are
they're like, what are we talking Star Trek?
We downloaded the wrong episode, folks.
All right, Adam, move on to the sponsor.
It's the one at the end of the hall. All right, so this Star Wars-centric, we promise, episode of Comic Geek Speak was brought to you by the fine folks at the Collection Drawer Company, makers of drawer boxes, the easy-access storage solution. And to what problem is this a solution, you may be asking? Why, it's the age-old problem of those old-fashioned lift-top cardboard long boxes. Now, if any of you out there have a collection of comic books of any great size, you've probably got piles of those old-fashioned lift-top boxes sitting around your domicile, and you know what a hassle it can be to access the comics in the bottom box on one of those piles. Well, the drawer box eliminates that difficulty by affording you access to the comics in every one of your drawer boxes via a pull-out drawer in the front of the box. You don't need to worry about the top of the box. There's no lid to pull off, no disassembling of piles of long boxes to worry about. You can just keep those piles of boxes nice and neat and even and pristine, and you can access those comics with a simple pull of a drawer. Now, and in addition to that convenience, drawer boxes are also an asset to you because of their structural integrity. They are built strong, built to last, built to be stackable and stable. And actually, within the past year, they've actually improved their structural integrity. The Collection Drawer Company has added an extra layer of cardboard to their standard drawer box design so that every drawer box they make is now triple strength. So you can stack them and store your comics with even more confidence. And in addition to all of this, the Collection Drawer Company also offers a couple of accessories to enhance the storage of your comics in drawer boxes. Accessories such as the Box Locks Box Anchors, which are little plastic tabs that stabilize your stacks of drawer boxes to prevent box tipping and to improve stability for partially full boxes, which can be important. They also offer Box Sort Upright Dividers, which are cardboard inserts, which help to not only organize the comics within your drawer boxes, help to separate them into little categories, whichever ones you want, alphabetically by company, you name it. But they also prevent the contents of your drawer boxes from falling over as the drawers are pulled out and pushed back in. So that helps to prevent flopping of the comics and prevents damage such as spine cracking and warping and wrinkling and all that sort of thing. They also offer these boxes in a variety of different shapes and sizes. If you happen to have something you have a large collection of besides comic books, they also offer drawer boxes that are sized for magazines, action figures, LP records, you name it. And if you have a very large collection and you're worried about the affordability of transferring over to drawer boxes from whatever storage system you're using right now, rest assured they offer volume discounts for large orders. So give the Collection Drawer Company a visit at collectiondrawer.com and find out what their drawer box product can do to make your life as a collector easier.
Very good.
As always, Murd, masterfully executed.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. All right, let's talk about some scoundrels here.
Yes.
Solo, a Star Wars story.
I'm gonna give Brian Deemer's thoughts when he replied in a text. He said, "Just tell everyone I loved it." So Brian Deemer loved it.
Yep, and he got to see it on his birthday too. So
oh, that's right. Yeah, but not no better way to spend a birthday. That's for sure.
Yep, took his family along with him, and he posted to Facebook that he thought it was awesome. So
yeah.
Very
All
sorry.
right, Shane, why don't you give us your initial thoughts?
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought all the actors did very well. I like the story. It's one of those things, just like Rogue One, where was it necessary? Probably not in the grand scheme of things. You know what's going to happen next, but boy, that was a hell of a lot of fun to watch, and it was a fun ride to be on and see all of these things that we've heard about all these years in various movies and cartoons and comic books,
additional
and
media.
Now you see it, and it's the way it was interpreted, the way it was laid out. I really thought it was a hoot and a half. I loved it. It was great.
Yes, and in that, Shane, it proves how necessary it is.
Yeah.
Because, gosh darn it, we need entertaining movies. That's kind of the rationale for motion pictures in the first place. And, you know, I agree with you completely, Shane. This was wonderful for me, sitting there in the theater. This was the most fun I've had watching a Star Wars movie in a heck of a long time. It does a good job of telling us this backstory for Han Solo that we've all wanted for so long. And as you said, it does. It's obvious that the father-son team of Lawrence and Jonathan Kasdan, who wrote the screenplay, dipped a little bit into extended universe type media. They didn't reference it directly in all cases, of course, but you can tell that they're aware of some of the story beats that dedicated Star Wars fans would be expecting for a Han Solo origin story. Sure. And they gave them to us. They paced it out very well, I think. I was a little worried that we were going to be spending too much time on Corellia, but sure enough, we got a cool speeder chase, and all of a sudden Han was off to the stars.
Yep.
And I was no less pleased with the other developments, the structure of the plot beyond that point. I thought the cast was believable and talented and gave some great performances. The visuals were on point. I thought Ron Howard is a worthy addition to the firmament of Star Wars directors. But the most important of all, it delivered a story that Star Wars fans have been hungry for a long time, and it gave it to us in a fun, light way. There are a few creative decisions that I might have wobbled on, but I have no major qualms about this movie whatsoever. I just left feeling perfectly satisfied.
Brothers, I echo your sentiments. I went into this, because I love Ron Howard's work.
I do too.
Pretty much every movie he's made that I've seen, I haven't seen all his movies, I've seen most of them. I've enjoyed to varying degrees, going all the way back to such classics as Night Shift and Splash.
Yes.
Yeah, and Ron Howard is a director who can do so many different genres. I think he's proven that over the years. So when the media came out that he was replacing Shane, who was the name of the team? They did the Lego movie.
I do not remember.
Okay, and I know there was some controversy, or at least the media was creating controversy around it because we don't know the real details there. But yeah. I was confident I was going to enjoy the film, knowing Ron Howard's hand was going to be on, the tiller, so to speak. And like you guys said, this was a really fun adventure story. And I was captivated by it. There were so many great, sort of Easter eggs and references that, longtime Star Wars fans would appreciate, right down to how Lando pronounced Han's name. We always heard that Han had joined the Imperial Navy. And it was really thrilling to see how that played out in this movie. We always heard about how, he had freed Chewbacca, and I like how that they brought all that into canon, so to speak. And And there was a lot of people saying, well, that he can't fill Harrison Ford's shoes, and it's not. And I got to tell you, I didn't go in there with a chip on my shoulder. I'm always willing to give any movie and any actor a chance. Mm-hmm. And what I really enjoyed about the movie, and I'd like to think this was purposeful. I think you saw in the film, especially as it got to the latter stages, him becoming Han Solo, both in how he carried himself and way he spoke, and his skills as a pilot and as a gunslinger, so to speak. And by the end of the movie, I really believed he was Han Solo, and even more so. And I'll talk about this more as we move along. Donald Glover as Lando Calrissian, for me, made that movie. Yeah. When he's in the Falcon, like doing a recording of one of his exploits with his feet up, and you could tell like he studied the cadence of Billy D. Williams' voice, like he was Lando Calrissian. It was because actors can when they change actors for iconic characters, some pull it off more than others. Mm-hmm. Like from his opening scene, I believed he was Lando Calrissian. So. The acting. I mean, we have a great actor like Woody Harrelson, and you knew he was going to deliver. Paul Bettany. I forgot the name of the lead who played Han's sort of femme fatale. She was wonderful.
Yeah, I do too.
Amelia Clark.
That's it.
Yeah,
thank you. The great actors like Tandy Newton was in there briefly. It reminded me of how the original New Hope film felt. It was fun. It was a great adventure. There was pathos, there was action, there was humor, everything I think a good Star Wars movie should have. So I really dug it.
Yeah. All right. So I loved the Easter eggs that we got that I can remember right off the top of my head. I love that we got an origin for the blaster, which I never really thought of, but that was kind of cool.
Yes, it was.
I loved the same beats that are in every Star Wars movie, but just a little bit different. And I know we saw them in the previews and stuff for those people that watched them, but I like I got a pretty good feeling about this instead of I got a bad feeling about this, which is in every Star Wars everything.
See, he's young. He'll learn.
He was like, yeah, I got a pretty good feeling about this. It couldn't have been more perfectly placed. I love that we got to see the Kessel run.
In less than 12 parsecs.
In less than 12 parsecs, if you round down.
Right. Yeah. And nobody caring about it.
Yeah. I love that you got the Falcon. I wasn't 100% thrilled with the way it looked with the escape pod put on it, but I like that you got an explanation for it and that it sort of tried to have a purpose. Whether it was effective or not is on debate on many things I've seen, sites and whatnot. I think it was, and it placed the story pretty well. Then you got your regular Millennium Falcon look. I loved the way that he met Chewbacca. I like that he already spoke a little bit Wookiee, but we really don't know from what, and it really doesn't matter.
Yes, and the translation, like the superimposed captions of the translations of his garbled attempts at speaking Wookiee. Yeah. Priceless.
I like the Death Star droid getting blasted apart in the chase on Corellia. I was afraid that we were going to return to Corellia and spend too much time there, like you said, Chris, but I thought that was perfectly placed, and we were off it and never going back, in the part of the movie. I didn't realize Paul Bettany was in it, so that was kind of a nice surprise as I saw him come through.
Yeah, he wasn't originally supposed to. I think that.
Okay.
No, he wasn't. They had to replace on it because I think they did reshoots, and the other actor wasn't available, so they put him in. That's what I remember reading anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of a reverse Jabba the Hutt situation.
Yeah.
Like the original idea was for the other actor to do a motion capture thing and have it be like a CGI alien, but instead we downgrade to a human being,
which perfectly fine. Someone said, and I didn't see it, I want to see it again so I can try and catch it, that in his museum or his private room was the Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark idol, the fertility god in the beginning. Somewhere statued, put in a case somewhere in there. God, that didn't come out right. But I want to go back and see if I can find it because I missed that in the first run.
Oh, we'll have plenty of opportunities to revisit and do little Easter egg hunts because this movie is going to get rewatched.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, that's
absolutely
one of my big compliments to it is that it's got phenomenal rewatchability.
I took the boys to it; they enjoyed it. when at the end of the movie I said, "Well, how'd you like it?" And they're both like, "Oh, it was all right." But during the movie, they were laughing, they were engrossed. So I just don't know why they wouldn't want to let on that they liked it as much as they did, but they did.
Teenagers. It's not cool to enjoy anything too much.
Yeah, but I was glad that they liked it. Matt really laughed when one of the guys got hit in the nether regions. He really let out a roaring laugh because he's at that age where everything like that's funny.
Yeah. Well, Khan's just lucky that particular alien keeps his nethers in that same region.
Yeah. I like that Jon Favreau voiced one of the characters. I didn't realize that was happening, and I'm listening to it, and I'm going, wait a minute.
Yeah, I didn't recognize his voice at first, but
No.
looked it up later on.
Wait.
That was a cool character.
Who did he voice?
The multi-arm pilot that they had
okay.
first.
Okay.
Which I also like that he's now developing a live TV Star Wars show to come some point.
Favreau is.
Yeah. We were having a discussion at work at one of our breaks about the movie and different movies and such, and somehow we got talking about just Ron Howard for a few minutes, and we got into American Graffiti, which was directed by George Lucas and starred Ron Howard, and now here we are back with Ron Howard directing something that George Lucas helped create in based on characters. So I kind of thought that was a neat little symmetry as our discussion went on. I'm sure I'll think of other stuff, but you guys go ahead because I'll gush all day about it.
I liked the appearance of the skiff guard disguise that Lando used in Return of the Jedi.
Yes,
that was brilliant.
See, that was a part of his wardrobe even back then.
I always just assumed he knocked somebody out and stole it, but that was great that he already had it.
Right in there among his vast collection of capes.
And I think Kira had on the one we see in Empire, but again, I want to go back and see it. It looked
I
like
think she did. I think she did.
It was a blue cape, and I swear it had yellow on the inside, which is what.
No, I think you're right about that.
The one that Lando was seen wearing in Bespin. Okay. Yeah, it just ties in perfectly with the vanity of the character, as Chris mentioned the scene of him sitting there recording his memoirs in the cockpit of the Falcon. In fine Billy D. Williams cadence Sid.
Sure.
So he's constructed, how self-absorbed Lando is very well, and also how he's into the droids apparently.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was brilliant.
He's been described as pansexual, and that I think that suits Lando as a character. He's just doesn't care what gender or what size or shape. If he seeks sexy in any and all forms.
And I like that the droid actually was like, "No, that won't work."
There are times when I think maybe, but no.
Well, her whole power to the people in terms of droids and her rebellious attitude was hilarious. I mean, that was a lot of fun to watch. When she sort of stokes the rebellion in that mining area they're in, and you felt affected when that droid was destroyed too.
Sure. And yet,
although she kind of lives in a way in the Falcon systems now, though,
which gives a great little nod to why 3PO has a hard time understanding the dialect that the Falcon talks. Even though, again,
exactly,
not
I don't know where
necessary,
your ship learned to communicate.
But it's a great add-on. Right? It doesn't hurt. Oh, so much fun.
Yeah, that's a good phrase. I don't think anything in this movie hurt, or took anything away from, the saga and the universe. I think it complemented so many elements of it. And like I said, I was always wanted to see, all right, did Han become an Imperial pilot? Was he a TIE fighter pilot? What happened? And, they tell you how he was kicked out of the pilot corps, probably for being – well, he basically said, I'm not a follower, essentially. And, they put him in the infantry. It was interesting to see that there is an Imperial army besides the stormtroopers.
Yeah.
Who are basically like the low-level grunts, essentially. Because you always assume, aren't the stormtroopers supposed to be kind of elite, essentially? Even though they can't hit the broadside of a barn unless they're, when they're shooting at the main characters. But that was interesting. And what I loved about those scenes, for those who are Stanley Kubrick fans, I think Ron Howard was inspired by the classic war film Paths of Glory, which is one of the greatest war films ever made, in my opinion, where Kubrick used tracking shots to show life in the trenches, and it seemed he was kind of emulating that in those scenes. Just wild guess on my part, but it looked great. I mean, I really loved sort of the claustrophobic feeling of that battlefield he created there. It was just great seeing, Han is recalcitrant. Han is insubordinate. Han, follows his own path, and you can see, and the fact that he was even in the military for, I think they said 3 years or something like that.
Yep.
You can only imagine what kind of trouble he must have gotten in.
Yeah.
Well, he was kicked out of the pilot corps, for example.
Oh.
So
Love how his
go ahead, Shane.
Love how his name came to be.
Yes.
It always seems sort of tongue in cheek to me that a main character who's by himself is named Solo, but all right, whatever. It's fine.
Maybe I'm just naive, but I always assumed that actually was his family name.
And it's fine if that's what it would have been. Nobody ever would have been none the wiser. It would have been fine.
Yeah, the word Solo might not exist in BASIC.
Right. But to have the Imperial guy, well, let's give you Solo, for however he explained it. Oh, it was just
and what's great about that is, and to piggyback what the point Murd made before about not spending too much time on Corellia, Han Solo as a character is always moving forward. Mm-hmm. So it made perfect sense. Like, they're not going to go too deep into like his parents and all that. They just, this is where he is, and he's trying to get off the planet. He's trying to make something of himself and get somewhere. And I loved how they did that. And I also, and you guys referenced this before as well about his optimism. And I really hope they make a sequel. They sure as hell set us up for one. But the fact that he's not totally jaded yet. And Shane, didn't they say this is about 11 years or so before New Hope?
So the beginning of the movie's 13 years, I think. And then when he's trying to team up with Woody Harrelson's character, Beckett, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
Tobias Beckett.
Go on from there. I think it's about 10 years.
So he has a decade to become the hardened smuggler that we know who we meet in the cantina in A New Hope. So I liked how, like I said, that they're kind of building him up. And so what did you guys think of what's how you pronounce his last name, the actor? Alden
Ehrenreich.
Yeah, what did you guys think of his performance?
Oh, I thought it was good. For all the naysayers and all the news we got where he's terrible, it's not going to work. I thought he was fantastic. Yeah. There was a little short thing I saw. I think it was Entertainment Weekly posted something on YouTube or whatever, where they were interviewing him, and Harrison Ford came up behind him and talked for a few minutes and said how great he was. And you always think, well, that's just a press junket. Yeah, he's going to say it's great because why would you say otherwise? But I really thought he did great. I thought he nailed it. Yeah, it took a few minutes to get used to him in the beginning, but again, he was really young then, trying to do something that we've didn't expect Han Solo to do when we were first introduced to him. He was jaded. He was more out for himself and Chewbacca and the Falcon to protect all of that, not to help anybody else. But back here, he's trying to get out with his girlfriend and make something of his life and do something just for them. Within a few minutes, he totally fit the part for me. Right down to the way his hair was combed, right down to his mannerisms, the way he looked, the way he held himself, the way he stood. A couple awkward things in the beginning as he's trying to find himself and maybe get with something to get him out of Corellia, out of the Imperial Navy. But once he got on that path and once he was doing something that he seemed to, quote, love, he fell right into the role with no hiccup for me.
Yep, I absolutely agree that he was not terrible as Han Solo. And these were people saying this before the movie was anywhere near being released.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Well, that's to be expected.
And that drives me nuts unto itself.
Yeah, but we gave him a chance, and he didn't always look like Harrison Ford. He didn't occupy the role quite as seamlessly as Donald Glover did young Lando. He was perfect to a T. But all the same, actually, sometimes I'd look at him and I'd feel more like I was looking at a young Jack Nicholson.
No, I can see that.
A young Harrison Ford.
I can see that.
Yeah. The one review I read said he looked more like Dennis Quaid than like Harrison. Maybe he's a Skrull. He just he looks like young versions of different actors to different people.
Yeah.
Or he's like the Joker's daughter. He can't make up his mind whose act he's following here. But yeah. Eventually, as the character, as the film progressed, he did. I agree, Shane. He did occupy the role. And with a lot of help from. I agree with your point about the hair and wardrobe helping him along, and all the kinesic aspects of his performance, the body language, the exaggerated shrugs and things. He had real charisma up there, which is something that Han Solo, whoever's playing him, needs to have. He had some of that boyish charm going on there, all the cockiness and the swagger, but shot through with the appropriate amounts of youthful insecurity at different times. And I think he was trying to bring kind of a youthful optimism and idealism to the role, which will be shot to hell, of course, by the next 10 years of his experience as a smuggler, as we've said. But yeah, yeah, he really did, as the movie progressed, grow into the part, and I think that was by design. I think that's Ehrenreich gradually showing us, as he seems to come into Han Solo's skin, he's showing us the character come into its own skin.
I also like that we didn't have to spend a lot of time finding Kira or explaining how she got where she is. It didn't matter. She's here. She recognized him, and all of a sudden that little bit of story is resolved, and now we move on from there.
Gives us a little bit of closure that we don't need to worry about Han getting back and fulfilling his youthful promise, because there it is.
And again,
so that's all right. It's been fulfilled for him.
To what Chris said, now he can move forward even more so than what I thought in the beginning of the movie. I thought we'd have to go back.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Shane.
No, I just said I thought we'd have to go back to Corellia to resolve that, and that all of that was taken away with good storytelling. And
right. So the plot can move forward.
Yep.
And one great plot device that's a callback, or in a sense a call forward to A New Hope, is that Woody Harrelson basically gives Han the speech that Han gives Luke when he initially refuses to help in the assault on the Death Star.
Yeah.
So you see how Han becomes akin to that Woody Harrelson character, the hardened, self-interested, almost callous, smuggler and mercenary. And I thought that was I was so pleased when I heard Lawrence Kasdan was writing this. My confidence in this movie just soared, because he's one of the main reasons we love these films. Mm-hmm. Because his hand, he co-wrote Empire Strikes Back, he co-wrote Return of the Jedi. His mastery of dialogue, which I just think he has the voice of Star Wars down in terms of he created that voice really in many ways of those characters. What George Lucas did so wonderfully in New Hope. Before, at least for me, a script writing went off the rails in the newer films, Kasdan has that down, and I think you saw it and felt it and heard it in this film, and that was a great moment where Becca says, "Look, you can't trust anyone," and this and that, and he basically said the same thing Han's going to say to Luke, 10 years later. Yeah. It was, and actually, remember Woody Harrelson says, "Look, why don't you come with me? Right? Let's." Like Han said to Luke, "Come with me. You're good in a fight." Mm-hmm. It was really well done. Now, if you guys don't mind, I really would like to spend some time on the cameo at the end. Yes, before we do that. Please. I loved the wink and a nod of Woody Harrelson saying, "You shot first," when that's right. Han shot him, which was awesome. Because I still think that's what he would have done. That's one of the few things I really disliked about that remake of A New Hope and all the additions that came in, is that Greedo shot first, or at least at the same time. No, Han shot first to protect himself, just as he would. Yes, well, fandom has had its say about that. Yeah. Oh, God, there was something else. And the Harrelson character, it was almost like he was proud. Oh, yeah. As he was dying. Yep, absolutely. Oh, I love, as gristled as Han gets over time. And, of course, that's all due to what he does as a smuggler for Jabba and probably various other things. I like that in this movie, at this point, just like Kira thought and said, as much as you want to kind of be a jerk and all on your own, you're still going to try and help the people. He's the one that really is funding the rebellion now at the beginning. Yeah. He's the one that gave them everything to get them all their money that they need to start, even though it's not the rebellion that we know yet. That's where it's heading. I absolutely loved it. I like that Warwick Davis had a cameo in it. Oh, yes. I like that Anthony Daniels had something in it, even though I didn't see him. I'll have to go back and figure out which Wookiee he is. And I like that Clint Howard was in it, as I was expecting. And I laughed, of course. I laughed in the theater, and nobody else did, so I guess nobody really realized who that was, but I knew who it was. What was Clint Howard doing? He was the slave driver in the mining pit, I'm pretty sure. Okay. Yeah, when Ryan and I saw that, we were the only people laughing out loud in the theater, because it's a Ron Howard film. Clint has to appear somewhere. Yep, I totally did not recognize him. In fact, I wasn't even sure Ron Howard had a son. Brother. Oh, okay. Brother. Well, then, see, that shows how much I know. But I did read someplace just earlier today that Clint Howard and somebody else involved in the production were supposed to play Tag and Bink, as seen in the Dark Horse Star Wars comics. Yep, that scene was cut. Yeah. That'll be on the DVD, I hope. I hope it's on the DVD, because that was a hilarious comic.
Yeah, and I do think that these screenwriters, as I mentioned earlier, they know their extended universe.
Sure.
You know, when I heard the word Crimson Dawn, I mean that's that particular name I don't think comes from a story. That name comes from X-Men comics, but there was one story going back to I think it was the first Darth Maul miniseries written by Ron Mars, where Darth Maul was sent out to reprimand, not to completely destroy or dismantle, but just to take down a peg, an interstellar criminal empire called Black Sun.
Okay.
And so here we have Darth Maul.
Well, I'm pretty sure they made mention of that in the movie too, Black Sun, around there somewhere.
Did they?
I thought so. In one of the groups that they were talking about, you know, there's this faction, that faction. I thought they said Black Sun somewhere in there.
All to the better if they did.
Which is a great segue for what Chris wanted to talk about next.
Well, Ryan and I went, you know, when we saw that, and Jun was telling me that Darth Maul has been appearing, or Maul has been appearing in the Extended Universe cartoons, correct?
Yes, he has. He's in both Clone Wars and Rebels.
Okay. So, because this movie takes place before Rebels, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, I've only watched the first season of Rebels. Love that I have to watch the rest of it. Because Rebels is over, correct, Shane?
It is.
Okay. So, what was it, 3 seasons?
4.
4? Okay. So, do you want fill in this in for me a little bit? So, how did he survive? I mean, obviously he had bionic legs on, but
so
he was cut in half.
he gets cut in half in Phantom Menace, and
right.
then Attack of the Clones happens. You don't hear anything, and then the Clone Wars cartoon happens, taking place in between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith.
Right.
And he shows up with a certain crude robotic legs that are not humanoid at all. And what I need to find out, and I don't remember because it's been a long time since I've watched Clone Wars, is at the end of his storyline in Clone Wars, where does he end up? I'm pretty sure he ends up in charge of something, a group. I don't remember if it's smugglers or a faction on a planet. I'm sure someone is screaming at their earphones now listening to this because I should know this, but I have not watched Clone Wars as often as I've watched everything else. And then you're left with that storyline being concluded, and the rest of Clone Wars happens to the end. And then you have the lost episodes that come out, and then you have the finale and all that. Then Rebels comes. You get through the first season. I don't think you see him until the very
He does not appear in the first season because I've watched that one, yeah.
At least in the next season, he starts showing up. Maybe the third season. God, I can't remember that. But he has a pretty good story arc in there trying to lure Ezra more to the dark side for his own benefit.
Okay.
Not in the best interest of Ezra or whatever. And that's a very interesting, very well done story. I'm very pleased with how it's resolved. By that time, he has more normal looking robotic legs. So and that's what I'm pretty sure he had that in the movie, in that cameo spot. So sometime after Clone Wars, but before this movie, he gets a better set of legs. You know, it sounds weird, but he does. Has a fantastic story that goes through Rebels.
I have to watch that, yeah.
Comes to a conclusion. Very well done. I love the episode that it happens in. And at first I had a little bit of a problem with how easily something was resolved, but after reading a couple things, and I'm not going to say any more about it other than to say I changed my mind with how pleased I was, and I became very pleased with how that was resolved and his storyline ended in Rebels. It's completely worth it. I think Clone Wars is fine. Don't get me wrong. It's enjoyable. I like it. But if you're going to watch one or the other, I would watch Rebels.
Well, I love the first season of Rebels. I just have to get back to it. So what you told me only whets my appetite even further now.
So well done. There are a couple things that I expected to happen because of certain things in Rogue One and Rebels, and then I was looking forward to certain things, and they didn't happen. But the end of Rebels explains why they aren't happening, and it's to me, very well thought out to come to a good conclusion with a doorway open for something later based on how they ended that series.
And how far is Rebels ahead of New Hope?
I think just a couple years, if that.
That's what I thought.
You know,
okay.
you're talking like right before Rogue One kind of time frame. But
Okay,
they
go ahead.
do a good explanation of certain things that you might have questions as you near the end of Rebels, and knowing Rogue One and A New Hope and Empire and all that. It's interesting. It's very interesting.
Okay, because what I'm intrigued now is I want to see what happens between Han and, damn it, what's the character's name again? Kira, because they're kind of setting her up to almost be his femme fatale because she's an agent of Maul.
Yep.
And before they showed Maul, I whispered to Orion, I said, I bet she's an agent of the Empire. Like, the Empire or those gangsters capture her, like what compromise did she have to make to survive, that type of thing. So I really hope they follow it up. Now, we're hearing all the scuttlebutt about, the movie's not making enough money for a Star Wars film and blah, 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 blah. I mean, it made over $80 million, which any other movie would,
Yeah. And
be
Ron
over
Howard
the moon
said
for. So
that's his best opening
ahead.
ever. Ron Howard had his best opening of a movie he did ever. That's great.
Yeah, so I really hope they return to this story because I want to see what happens. Like, because you would think that what happens between Han and Kira is probably going to really contribute to what makes him such a jaded character in A New Hope.
Sure, and by that time he's going to be working for Jabba, if not exclusively, at least a little bit. So you might hear a little bit about that. You might even see something about that, and then you can go on with this storyline and what has to happen with Maul and Crimson Dawn and the rebellion starting and Han and Kira. And I would be very disappointed if in 3 or 4 years we don't get another Solo movie. I don't need a trilogy. I don't need it to go past this one. But for how well this one was done and put out there, and such great cliffhangers without ruining a completion to the movie we were watching, not leaving you totally hanging or anything. I want to see what happens next with these
I couldn't agree more.
Well, let's hope enough people continue to vote with their dollars here so that that sequel ultimately does get made.
And they even surprised me with so after Kira's confrontation with Han and saving him from, oh my God, I forget his name, whatever Paul Bennett's character,
Voss.
Voss. I at that point when she said to him, go save Chewie and all that, I knew she was leaving. It just was a matter of whether she was going to blow herself up or whether she was going to do something else, and she did something else, and that was great.
Yeah, there's no percentage in blowing yourself up, so we could rule that one right out.
I liked... Oh, I just lost my train of thought. Son of a gun. I got too excited about thinking about that in my head.
I hate when that happens.
Well, I'll tell you a little side story. Like, oh God, I don't know. A few hours before I went and saw the movie, I never, ever get spoiled looking on Facebook or something. And I had something come across my feed that totally ruined that reveal. And I'm like,
too bad.
You've got to be kidding me. And then as the movie kept going, yes. And as the movie kept going, I'm like, oh, well, maybe they were just goofing around. Maybe they were wrong. And then son of a gun, at the end when it happened, I'm like, oh, I was right. Shoot. So that's the first time I've really ever been spoiled about anything in, God, years. Because most people are so cordial as to say, hey, spoilers, and then you scroll down if you want to read them or you don't. This was just pasted right in a post, bright as day. And it's from a friend who watches the movies. I'm sure he doesn't watch the cartoons. He would never have known that Maul showed up in Clone Wars or Rebels, whereas I did. So to me, what his excitement was, oh, wow, great. After 20 years, we know what happened. Maul Sarai, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, well, I knew that 10 years ago, and I knew that last week. And just with the way Clone Wars and Rebels did, that's not a big deal. But it still would have been a neater reveal for me had it not been spoiled. But hey, that's what happens. It happens every now and then.
This is why Pants goes so gaga all the time.
I know, but I didn't go that crazy about it. I mean, I was like, oh, crap. But no big deal. It still was enjoyable.
Murdo, how did you react to Darth Maul's appearance?
Kind of an eye roll, actually. He was bisected in that movie. I never thought he was that interesting a character to begin with. And I've read read one and skimmed another miniseries featuring him, waiting for somebody to make me care a little more about him. still waiting. And now here he is, annoyingly alive. And I, too, like your friend, I didn't watch a whole lot of Clone Wars when it was on Cartoon Network, and I have never seen a single episode of Rebels because I don't get Disney XD. Mm-hmm. So I was as oblivious to all of that as your friend blurting this spoiler out onto your Facebook wall was. And so it was very much a surprise to me, but a surprise that fell flat because I just don't care that much about Darth Maul.
When he first showed up on Clone Wars, I was a little bit like, really? Okay, we're going to bring him back. Because for how they promoted Phantom Menace and putting him on the packaging and all the trailers and everything, I thought, oh my God, this is the big baddie, and he was nothing. He was throwaway. But it was an enjoyable.
He was a cool visual. That was about it.
Yeah, cool visual, great lightsaber battle, but that was it. But his story through Clone Wars was good enough and made me care a little bit, and I'm glad it was there. Rebels made it better. So when this came around, I'm like, okay, well now I'm into it because I know what happens after this to tie up his story, but I would enjoy seeing what he does now that he's this. So give me one more movie where there's a conflict between Han, Kira, and him, end it, and then I'm good.
Probably Jabba the Hutt thrown in some capacity.
Probably, somewhere in there. Oh,
well, see, Shane. Now I always want to catch up with Rebels. Now I have an greater incentive because,
oh my God,
like Murd's saying, I've never cared much about Darth Maul, but I want to see them realize that character. And if they've done that more in Rebels,
I really
hopefully that'll carry over now if they do another solo film.
There's so much good in Rebels. Again, first season's good, but compared to the others, it's not as good. Season 1's okay. 2, 3, and 4. Fantastic, and they build.
That's saying something because I love season 1, so that's great.
And some of it's the cameos that they pull in, some of it's the stories that they tell, some of it's the bad guys that come in and out of the story the whole way through. Some of it's what happens with Kanan, some of it's what happens with Ezra. It's just so well done. I wish it would have been on for another couple seasons. I could have used more of it, but they really went out on a high note. And I think there's something else to come after that with these characters to tell one more story, I hope.
Do you know if Rebels is streaming anywhere?
Not yet, no. I keep looking.
Okay.
And it just became available on iTunes, and I refuse to pay $80 or $90 for it. Wow. It's just outrageous.
Because I have the second season on DVD, so I can at least watch that. Mm-hmm. But I don't have 3 and 4.
And it's not rerun anywhere. I think at the very least, I want to say it's within the next year or so, Disney's going to have their own streaming service, as everybody is so prone to do. And I think this stuff will end up on there. But again, so I'm going to go a little Star Trek here. I haven't watched Star Trek Discovery yet. I didn't have much interest before because it was only going to be on streaming. I have a lot more interest now from things I've heard, but
you still have to pay CBS.
You still have to pay CBS, whereas other parts of the world, it's on Netflix, which is where I thought it would be. So I'm not going to pay. I don't want to pay for more streaming services to begin with. I have Netflix and Amazon Prime. And Netflix, I chose to do that because of the Marvel TV shows that are on it. And Amazon Prime is happy secondary thing because my wife signed us up for Amazon Prime for shipping. Okay, that's great. But I'm not thrilled with trying to pay for more services. We already had cable and the whole cable bus where you're paying extra for everything under the sun. However, that all being said, I won't pay for a streaming service just to watch one show, which is what I would be doing for CBS just to watch Star Trek. As much as I want to see it,
me too. Yep.
Things I've heard. However, I would be willing to pay for a Disney one because Disney now has Muppets. Well, it has Disney's stuff itself. It has Muppets, Star Wars, Marvel, possibly Fox stuff, which would encompass X-Men and all that crap. So there's a lot more that would interest me on that, and I'd be willing to do it for that. But it also would depend on price and all that stuff.
Of course.
I'd be willing to do it because there's such a catalog of things that I would enjoy on it. And I would hope that Rebels would be one of those things that would stream on that service.
And I've heard you guys.
I'm sure it will.
That there are season DVD collections.
There are, but they're expensive. I think they're expensive. I keep waiting for them to go on sale or something, and they do a little bit, but not enough to make me want to buy them.
Yeah, the second season of Rebels I got a couple of years ago. It was on sale, I think, at Walmart, so it wasn't expensive.
Yeah.
But I have to watch the one before I even think about getting 3 and 4. But I'm sure I'll love it.
Yeah. And then you have all those
So.
like in the middle of each of those seasons, there was like a summer telemovie of something in I think pretty much in between every season. And I don't know if they're included on the DVDs or not. They might be separate. I hope. I've never looked at the DVDs, so I don't know. I come to think of it, I didn't even really look when it came out on iTunes as the collection, the whole complete thing. I don't know if they're included in that, but again, since it's complete, I would hope they're in there.
You mean like in the beginning of season 2 when they had the episode with a certain Sith Lord?
Yeah, and the beginning of the whole series.
That's on the DVD.
Okay, all right, good.
For season 2.
Which
that's the one I did watch. It was awesome.
It was. Well, that gets better. That, oh my god! By the end of that season, that storyline's really good.
If you don't mind, I'd like to comment a little bit about, because I've been doing some background reading about some of the other, no pun intended, solo movie projects they're working on.
Mm-hmm.
So I heard James Mangold's going to direct a Boba Fett film.
I heard that as well, and I'm
which
not unhappy about that.
Extremely excited about. What's that?
I'm not unhappy about it. The only thing I don't want to see is now we have Solo, and I want to get to a second Solo so we see what happens next. Having a Boba Fett's fine, but I don't want a Boba Fett, a Bosk, a Dengar, an IG-8. Like, I don't want just scoundrel movies for a while. I want a mix of it. I want to see an Obi-Wan come through. I want to see the second Solo, and then maybe something else from that. Give me Boba Fett.
Well, from what I read, Obi-Wan's going to happen with Ewan McGregor.
That's what I'm hoping. That's
the
hoping.
one I'm most excited about. And we've talked about that for years, that, they should have him on Tatooine. And, Ewan McGregor, it was said many times, I've read he's open to do the role.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I've read recently, again, these are media reports, but so I'll take them with a grain of salt. But hopefully they're true, is that that's in development.
Yeah.
So,
well, and in addition to that being in development with the whole Boba Fett thing, there's the Jon Favreau TV show that's in development, as well as, if I'm not mistaken, an anime-style cartoon to come next, which probably will be featured on the XD streaming, whatever, Disney streaming service.
Any idea what time frame of Star Wars that would be set in?
I think close to A New Hope Empire, between this 30-year span of Revenge of the Sith to New Hope, somewhere where we're playing already, somewhere in there. But I saw an article, someone showed it to me. I forget where exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was in around this time frame that we're already playing with.
Sounds good to me. You guys have other comments on the film?
I know what I was going to say way back when.
Oh, good.
Please.
Reattached your train of thought.
I did. As great as it was to come to the end with everything that happened with Beckett, with Kira, with Han and Chewie, I really did not think we would see the Sabak game where Han wins the Falcon from Lando. And they still were able to pull that off and show it to us. In amongst that, giving us a little bit of Han and Chewie, kind of, especially Han, being a little bit gruff with Lando and doing the whole fake gonna punch you thing, which then Lando does in Empire.
Right.
Totally brilliant. Like, yeah, it's tongue-in-cheek. Yeah, it's a little hammy. But, man, it just worked for that character. And now you have a whole reason why Lando does it back to Han. It was almost like, even though they were referencing things we already know and just tweaking them a little bit, it just made it more enjoyable. And sometimes that doesn't work. But this time, I don't know, it just really did.
Yeah, all credit to the screenwriters for not only...
And we have to remember that... I'm sorry, Murray, go ahead. I apologize.
For not only weaving a tapestry of established history and little innovations along the way, but just... I was really impressed by the level of humor that they used.
Yeah.
And coming off of seeing Deadpool 2... I didn't get quite the same kind of guilty belly laughs that I got from that movie, but it was tasteful, subdued humor. It never felt forced.
No.
Which is more than I can say for the attempts at jokes that Lucas tried to slip into the last couple of scripts he did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's it. They struck just the right tone.
Yep.
And to add to that, when you're talking about that one of those wonderful, callbacks to when we see Han and Lando or as Lando would say, Han, in Empire, Again, it's the same screenwriter, right? So Empire Strikes Back, I had actually one of the DVDs right here, was written by Lee Brackett and Lawrence Kasdan, and Lawrence Kasdan co-wrote this movie. So that's wonderful continuity there in a creative sense. And, you have one of the originators of Lando's voice on the page in this film, and it worked brilliantly. And they got, like, the perfect actor. I mean, I was in awe of Glover's performance. Like, I had a huge feces-eating grin on my face, just watching him do Lando Calrissian.
He's been great in so many things, and so versatile for what he was in The Martian, what the little cameo he was in Spider-Man Homecoming, what he is in this. He really is diverse in what he can do and what he portrays.
And they're still not considering a Lando solo movie.
And I'm okay with that for now. I want one later, but I think some of these other things should come through first. I think that they should. I have ordered the comic book that they kind of. What's it called?
Double or Nothing.
Double or Nothing.
First issue just came out yesterday, and I visited Golden Eagle this afternoon, and it's already sold out. I have to get my hands on it another way, but yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that also.
And I want to see more of that come through for a little while, and then give me a couple movies down the road. A lot of people were burned by The Last Jedi, and I liked it well enough, but I had problems with it. Mm-hmm. This is so much better than that.
Right.
I just can't say how much better it is.
Yes,
it's fantastic.
This is totally unproblematic, straightforward Star Wars fun.
Yeah.
Yes, and
go ahead, Bart. I'm sorry.
I was going to say that a couple of critics. I mean, I've read only one full review from Time Magazine, but I've gotten the impression that the critics are underwhelmed by this because it doesn't do anything new with Star Wars, I suppose. But does it really need to come down to it? This is something that I suppose if you're not a pre-existing fan of the Star Wars franchise, if you're not somebody like us, objectively speaking, it probably might not give you much to get excited about. But it's a movie that people like us are absolutely going to gobble up because.
Yeah, well, and even so, you're still talking about a movie that for me, all intents and purposes, it's a spacefaring Ocean's 11.
Yeah,
Get
it's
a crew together,
a Star Wars heist
pull a
story. It's a rollicking,
You know,
picaresque narrative in a galaxy far, far away.
Rogue One was a spacefaring Dirty Dozen. Go in, storm something, grab the plan, save the universe. I don't have a problem with that. And to me,
and what's go ahead, sir. I'm sorry, sir.
It's no different than Crisis on Infinite Earths. You have a great 12-issue series that you can read and get enjoyment out of it. You want to read more about it, you read all the crossovers. That's what this is. You don't need to watch Rogue One. You don't need to watch Solo. You have the story. You know what happens to these characters. But if you just want some fun, then go to these ancillary stories and enjoy them.
Yeah. These Star Wars stories are just that, stories, intended to be consumed and enjoyed rather than continuations of overlong, self-important space epics.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to say, you made a great point, Shane, about like the Dirty Dozen. We always have to remember where Star Wars comes from in terms of Lucas's influences, right? You know, Japanese cinema like Kurosawa films, old West, Westerns, Robin Hood, Flash Gordon. I mean, the hodgepodge of pop culture he drew from and history, from his youth and things he read and saw. So it's only appropriate that, the templates for these films are all these classic sort of, tropes that we've seen before, because that's what Star Wars comes from.
Yeah.
And it works so well. And what I was going to come on before was I enjoyed The Last Jedi, but like you guys, I enjoyed this movie more. Mm-hmm. I don't know. There's something. I don't know if heavy's the right word. There's something with The Last Jedi that dragged for me a little bit. And again, I'm still very much looking forward to how they end that particular trilogy. Maybe some of the characters aren't as captivating for me, although I love because he's one of my favorite actors, right? I love the Oscar Isaac character. But this movie had there was just that jolt to it, that fun. Yeah. That just worked so well. Another comment I want to make, going back, we're talking about the other stories they may do. I hope when they do a Boba Fett film, because I'm sure it sounds like it's inevitable. Because when we think about Boba Fett, I mean, his screen time is so minimal.
Oh, yeah.
In reality. And it was the cartoon when he first appeared, and then he has two sort of brief sequences in Empire and Jedi, then he falls into the Sarlacc pit. And then of course we know the character so well in books and comics, so they've really expanded him. Mm-hmm. And I really hope in that film they just really show us the badass Boba Fett. Forget the clone kid and all that stuff. Just you want to see Boba Fett just being that character who could just fight his way out of any situation and just always, sort of pull a rabbit out of his hat and achieve his bounty and his mission and so forth. And, I want a movie that's down and dirty and is just, rotten to the core in like the best possible way. So I hope we see that. Just like I hope when they do Obi-Wan, which I'm really looking forward to that with Ewan McGregor, you want to see him on Tatooine and, what his life like was there and, what because that he had to get involved in escapades, of course, and maybe they'll show like Luke as a little kid, right, and him kind of because he talked about old Ben in the Dune Sea, so they must have had interactions. I want to see like the little Luke with the floppy hat, right, and that whole thing. Yep. And so there's so much to play with here if they have the right directors and the right writers.
And yet that's not to say that, okay, so if you get an Obi-Wan movie and you have a young Luke with the floppy hat and all that stuff, I don't then need a Luke solo story or a Leia solo story.
Yeah, the whole first trilogy was kind of the Luke solo story.
Yeah, I don't need them to delve any more than that. But give me something like what you just said, Chris. I'm perfectly fine with that. It doesn't always have to be about the Skywalkers anymore, or just Luke, or just Leia, or just it's an expanded universe for a reason, and you have to expand it to keep moving forward. You can't constantly go backwards. Now, again, going back to Star Trek, I thought J.J. Abrams did a great job of bringing back the original characters in a new way and made it work, and it worked well without destroying anything that came before. That, yeah, you could probably do something like that with Star Wars at some point, but you're also on a pretty good path for the most part with what you're doing. And I don't think that they should mess with that much. I think you move forward. You might have a trilogy that's the main Star Wars story, but all these individual stories popping up, I think they're doing a great job. I know a lot of people didn't like Rogue One, and I still cannot figure out why.
Rogue One has grown on me. I mean, I enjoyed it when I first saw it, but I enjoyed it even more now. I've seen it, a couple times since I first saw it in the movies, and I really dig it. I mean, I liked how they went into the seamy cost of being in a rebellion, and the toll that takes, and like the really, sort of shades of gray choices one has to make. Just like in Last Jedi, when Benicio del Toro goes, look,
yeah,
you're selling weapons to the good guys and the bad guys here, right? Mm-hmm. So, or that's as much as Star Wars is a fairy tale and it's a fantasy. Mm-hmm. There's always darkness in everything. Not to go into the whole dark side thing, but people have to make difficult choices, and I really like how in a movie like Rogue One they really got into that. And they showed like for Luke to play the hero, other people had to commit murder essentially and do really questionable things for that to happen. So like when I always forget the character's name, the actor, the Spanish actor who played the rebel intelligence agent,
Cassian Andor.
Yeah, like when he murders that informant, right? Because he had to cover his tracks. That was a moment of espionage where you say, okay, that's what the cost that had to be. He had to carry that on his shoulders now to get to the next stage for that mission. So when they did that in that movie, I thought, oh, all right, I'm going to like this movie. Like that's the kind of stuff I like to see when it comes to that kind of drama. So good stuff, gentlemen. Good stuff.
At what point in Solo did you know that you were going to like that movie, Chris?
The minute that they, when he takes the dice off the mirror in the land speeder,
mm-hmm.
and then when they showed him in like that, I guess it's almost like a customs clearinghouse, and you see like the Imperial naval troopers and their samurai helmets, and there's another callback that Lucas drew from, and the stormtroopers, and it reminding you of how vast the Empire is, and how he's going to bribe an Imperial official because they're a long way from Coruscant, right?
Mm-hmm.
On this planet, and then when they showed him in the Imperial military, and I was like, yes, like they're really going into like all the stuff we've heard about, and And from there, I was really into the film, and Ryan and I were just grinning and just
And when he's in the Imperial Navy, just a couple lines of explanation about what he did, where he got to where he is now. You didn't need to see everything.
Right, leaving it to the viewer's imagination.
Just a couple lines explained where he got to being in the infantry, and that was it. That's all I needed.
Yep, fans appreciate a few little nooks and crannies to insert their fan fictions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that scene, too,
Exactly.
for me, what you said, Chris, about showing the scale of the Empire, its bigness, it also shows you its corruption, its sort of syphilitic dysfunction, because listen to me, I'm Lando. Han's superior officers are braying some cant about for the greater glory of the Empire and bringing order to the galaxy, and then they get shot.
Oh,
and so
talk about putting something
a little bit of
on
catch-22 absurdity there about the ridiculousness of war.
on that commercial. You have the Empire's theme playing in the background of the commercial for the Empire. Brilliant.
Oh, then you saw the recruiting images, and that's a great point, Murray, because any when you get to any kind of bureaucracy that large, whether it's in space fantasy or in reality, it's made up of people, and inevitably corruption sleeps in, and cynicism, and self-interest, and you have like the shiny propaganda, and then you have the guys dying in the mud in a trench. And Woody Harrelson's character is imitating an officer, and he's like, "Why do you have blaster burns on your tunic, there, pal?"
Yeah.
It's a long way from the Emperor's throne room, right? And I like how they showed you that, and we saw some of that in a way in Rogue One too. I mean, the Empire is so vast that inevitably there's going to be those kind of situations in a myriad of ways, and I really enjoyed seeing them capture that in those scenes.
Agreed.
What else, gentlemen? Anything else?
Where do you guys put this in the overall Star Wars movie verse? Where do you rank this?
Yes.
Up at the top with A New Hope and Empire, down at the bottom with Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones?
Top, without question.
Okay.
I would put it like at let's say the lower top. The original trilogy, again, because of the Vader-Luke dynamic, has elements to it that are simply mythic. Mm-hmm. I mean, the duel in Return of the Jedi, when the choral music comes in, it still gives me chills like it did when I was, a little kid. And obviously, this is a different type of film. It's not going to have that kind of mythic quality because it's also at an earlier point in the story and the unfolding of the saga. But I really enjoyed it. It was definitely way up there because again, it for what Ron Howard was tasked to do in that movie, I think he accomplished it, magnificently. So
okay, so there's 10 movies out right now. Now, what's interesting in my list, and I'll rattle it off quick. Every 2 movies I can flip-flop at any given point depending on my mood or what I'm watching at that time.
It's only fair.
So for right now, my favorite is A New Hope, then Empire, then Rogue One, then Return of the Jedi, Force Awakens, Solo, Revenge of the Sith, Last Jedi, Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones. But as I'm looking at it, every single pair, like A New Hope and Empire, I would flip them in a heartbeat depending on my mood. Rogue One and Return of the Jedi would flip. Force Awakens and Solo could flip. Revenge of the Sith and The Last Jedi could flip. Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones could flip. Just the way it's paired, I'm looking at it thinking, well, sometimes I like this better than that, and I could flip those. Now, I couldn't necessarily flip between threes and 4 groupings of things, but just 10 movies, group them in pairs, I could flip any one of them around pretty easily, just in their spot and what's next to them kind of thing. It was really weird when I looked at it and thought, oh, well, because like to me, I know we all have problems with the prequels, but yet I still think Phantom Menace, for the most part, is a well put together story. It's a better movie than the other 2. It tells a better tale from the beginning to the end, across the board. Yeah, the Gungans are kind of stupid and throwaway, and the whole Jar Jar Binks thing wears on me feverishly when I watch it. But I still think it's a pretty good story. Attack of the Clones had problems and I could get rid of half of that movie, Revenge of the Sith told a better story, but still was a little bit choppy. But they do have their worth. So I don't ever just discount them as being crap. It was George Lucas's playground, and he did what he wanted, and it made millions of dollars, and
so
we all went to see it. So it can't be all bad.
Multiple times, no less.
Yeah. It's just interesting to me as I would rank that stuff out over the last few days, how my pairings came. That really my pairings are my favorite groupings of things. So I have like 5 levels of how good Star Wars movies are, and these are at the bottom, these are in the middle. But that's not to say that I hate any of them.
Sort of roughly 3 tiers of quality.
Yeah. If you want to keep going with it, I just A New Hope for years was not my favorite. It was Empire, and I still love Empire. But there are times when I think about it, how Star Wars told a complete story, and if you never made another one, you could be completely satisfied with how that movie ended.
Mm-hmm. And for a long time I was, because it took me well until late childhood before I ever even saw Empire Strikes Back.
And there's something to be said for what George Lucas did with what he was facing to get it done. Still making this blockbuster movie that nobody thought would go anywhere.
That's an amazing story in itself.
So just that sometimes will put it at the top of the barrel for me as my favorite movie, and sometimes not. Sometimes I'll go back and Empire is just the end all be all of what I want out of a Star Wars movie. But boy, the Rogue One, the Solo. Even The Force Awakens, I thought that was a very well-crafted story. There are things I would have done differently or would have rather seen in an Episode 7, but I was very pleased with that movie, and I thought it was very well done. And it gave a spark with bridging the gap between the original cast and the new cast and trying to get some momentum going for a longevity of this property to continue in a way that fans might enjoy it. So I applaud it for that.
I concur. I'm enjoying it thoroughly. Shall we give our ratings?
Yeah.
Unless Murray, you have some closing thoughts. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
I don't suppose so. But I wanted to engage Shane for a minute about this whole ranking business. And then, Chris, please feel free to share your own rankings afterwards.
Sure.
Because it's sort of taking Facebook by storm. Our old friend Mario, TV's
That's where
Mario.
I first started to do it on there. And then I loved your rankings, how you did it. That is brilliant.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, because you liked it, so
I did.
Yeah, so it was that inspired me to sort of jump in. But so you and I have the same number one. It is Star Wars. I can't bring myself to call it A New Hope.
I know. I have problems with it too.
It's just Star Wars to me.
Yeah.
And then follow that up with the Jabba the Hutt sequence at the beginning of Return of the Jedi. Then Empire Strikes Back. Then the rest of Return of the Jedi. Then the only you talk about the flippable pairs that you have in your list. The only pivot point in my own list would be Solo and Rogue One, because they follow right after the original trilogy. And right now I'm still pretty high on the thrill ride that was the Solo movie, so it's number one. But I could easily see myself, when I'm in a more somber, reflective mood, preferring Rogue One to that. Then we get into the newer ones, The Force Awakens, which I thought was a pretty darn good movie, but I did have a couple of reservations. Then the controversial The Last Jedi, which I have much stronger reservations about.
Yes, do I.
And then I admire you, Shane, for being able to rank the prequels. Because I don't want to dismiss them as total crap either, really. I mean, despite what I said in that post I did on Mario's wall, where I reduced them all to, quote, a single, indivisible, molten lump of disappointment. But
there's some truth to that. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, it's not that I don't think each of those films does have its redeeming qualities, its strengths. But I also think that each of those films suck in approximately equal measure, just in very different ways. I mean, each of them has weaknesses that balance out its respective strengths. Like you said that Phantom Menace was a better structured story, and I can agree with that. But then there's also the other stupid things involved there, the whole Gungan business, the acting of Jake Lloyd, etc. And then you've got the problems with the Attack of the Clones. You don't have you have the CGI Yoda for the first time in that one, which galls me a little bit.
Yeah.
And then we get to Revenge of the Sith, and it's hard for me to forgive the filmmakers for the gradual degeneration of the character of Amidala. She goes from warrior queen to ineffectual senator to pregnant girlfriend. as we move along.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
Yeah, that's a bad.
Do you mean Love Is Blind?
Oh my God, that's the worst line in the whole series.
Yeah, so each of them have got some pretty strong drawbacks, and in the end, I just can't distinguish between them since they all seem to average out to about the same level.
But yet for me, with Revenge of the Sith, you get such a great Obi-Wan storyline that I absolutely love. I could watch him do that character movie after movie if,
Could watch him do it in a Star Wars story solo film.
That would be great. I love what the Marvel comics have done with him. Some of the, quote, times past stories that you've gotten out of that. Oh, just phenomenal. And some of that, for me, comes from Ewan McGregor portraying the character.
Yeah. Chris, join the fun.
Well, I haven't ranked the movies in my mind for quite some time. I mean, Empire is always number one for me. I think on every level that film is so masterfully executed. The writing is impeccable in terms of the dialogue, the way Kasdan and Brackett capture the characters in just a few beats of dialogue. The Leia Han dynamic is just so perfect in that film. You get a greater sense of the power of the Empire, of Vader, the Emperor, the Yoda. I mean, like I said, that movie has a mythic feel. It's an epic film, yet it never sacrifices character, which is a complaint I have with some of the prequels. I mean, if I had to rank the films just off the cuff, I mean, Empire is the first, New Hope is second, and then Return of the Jedi is third. After that, I'd really have to think about the rest. I concur. I mean, when it comes to the prequels, Shane, I concur with you. There's elements of Revenge of the Sith I really enjoy. And like the last, let's say, 45 minutes of that movie, I'm really engaged in it. Again, Ewan McGregor's a great actor. So even if you give him bad dialogue, he's going to make something of it.
Yeah.
And, the duel he has with Anakin, that whole sequence to me is epic and befits just what you would want from that. Because we'd heard for years about, Vader was, disfigured by his final duel with Obi-Wan, and that sequence didn't disappoint me. Like, I really was taken in
and say what you
by
will
that.
About Hayden Christensen, I really thought he put his heart and soul into, if nothing else, throughout those two movies he was in, that whole him turning into Vader, the lightsaber battle. I cannot imagine the hours of precision dueling and choreography that went into that to make them battle each other while being similar in fighting styles and movements, because Obi-Wan trained him, so he would have some similarities to it. Just going for that longevity of that battle, I would love to have been a fly on the wall as they talked about it, compiled it, practiced it, did it, to see the end result, and then it's all over now. Yeah, no,
I agree. A lot of people will rail on Hayden Christensen. I don't really, when I think about the prequels, and Shane, I think you make a good point about Phantom Menace in terms of being a narrative. I think my big issue with those films is a lot of the dialogue is very wooden in those movies.
Extremely.
And there's not a lot of humor, or at least humor that works. And for me, the original Star Wars films, there's a lot of humor in those movies. It doesn't dilute the drama and the pathos and the mythic qualities. And that's really missing in a large part for me from those prequels. But there are elements in each film that I enjoy. I mean, for me, Revenge of the Sith is far and away the best of the three prequels. And as far as the other films, and I have to really think about ranking them. The two, Solo and Rogue One, I think are both excellent. And I appreciate Rogue One even more now. I think I give it probably a higher frickin' swear than I did whenever we talked about it, a couple of years ago. Force Awakens, I think, is tremendous. I really love that movie. I love the tone of it. It's J.J. Abrams. I mean, he just makes a damn good product. And you mentioned before about his Star Trek films. Well, like I was just reading today about, because I went online. I thought, are they making a Star Trek 4? I'd heard they were, and I read online. Looks like they're going to. And when we think about what he accomplished in that Star Trek reboot and how wonderfully done that was.
Yeah.
Force Awakens, I had a similar feeling. Like he returned to that. He brought us back to that world, and it really worked for me. I mean, Last Jedi. I have to watch it again. I bought the DVD. I was watching. I kind of got distracted. I have to get back to it. But there are a lot of elements of that movie I really loved. I loved Mark Hamill's performance in it, for example. But I don't know what it is. I have to watch it at least a few more times before I really definitively comment on it. But there's just something about that movie that I don't want to say rubs me the wrong way. That's not the right phrase. But there's just something that's missing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
There's
part of it is. I'm sorry, Sean. I didn't mean to cut you off there. Let me just finish my thought. Part of it is, and I said this from Force Awakens too. I don't buy the First Order. That's the one part of Force Awakens that was a little flat for me, and even more so in Last Jedi. I just don't buy that they just don't work for me as like the quote villainous entity.
Agreed.
In the film, like the whatever the hell his name is, the motion capture circus character. What's his name?
Snoke.
Yeah, like Snoke to me is so massively underwhelming. Plus, you don't even know who the hell he is. Like, it's just like, all right, he cut him in half. He's dead. There's just no weight to that character at all. And oh God, I'm brain farting terribly tonight, gentlemen. Who's the wonderful actor who plays Ben Solo?
Oh, Adam Driver.
Adam Driver is a tremendous actor. I love him in everything I've seen him do, and I'm enjoying his performance. But I just think the First Order kind of dilutes some of the impact of all that. It's just like, oh, okay, they got knockoff AT-ATs. Okay, it's just I don't know. I so love the whole concept of the Empire, and the First Order just feels like. I mean, I guess maybe in a way it's supposed to. It's like this. Also ran that's trying to,
Well, and to me, they should be just the Empire. It's no different than I'm sort of, when I can, rereading Heir to the Empire. And I know that that's completely out of, quote, canon now. But to me, that story is the Empire still trying to have a foothold on things and building themselves back up.
Yeah,
and,
that's true.
And that's really what the First Order is. I don't know why they felt it necessary to call them something else. They are the Empire. They're the remnants of the Empire that have gathered themselves together and gotten a foothold in the universe, and they're trying to get more. And that's all it is.
Yeah. And I agree with that. And again, I'm like Force Awakens. I love Last Jedi. I gotta watch a few more times, but I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. It's just I think a lot of it is Snoke. I just find Snoke so incredibly underwhelming.
Well, I made my
and I love Andy Serkis. I mean, it's not nothing against him. It's just whatever they gave him there with that. It's just like. Okay.
I made my peace with the whole Snoke thing because when you think about what you knew of the Emperor in Empire and Jedi, it wasn't much. And it really didn't matter what happened to the Emperor in Jedi other than Vader overcame him, destroyed him, and saved himself in the process. And that's all you need to know about the Emperor at that point. Now, I'm happy that they fleshed him out a little bit in Phantom Menace and all that. That's fine. But for how many years... we didn't know anything about the Emperor other than he was the Emperor. And that's what I felt like Snoke. You didn't know anything about Snoke other than he's the leader. And the fact that he's gone now really doesn't matter because it served the purpose of the story, just like Vader lifting the Emperor and throwing him over the edge. Now, I could have gotten a little bit more out of Snoke if they did something with him, or maybe they could have changed something that would have made it more interesting, but I made my peace with, all right, well, he's done now. It doesn't really matter. He served his purpose.
They're continuing to make these movies, too, so there are plenty of opportunities for future filmmakers to dig him back up.
Now, if you dig him back up because he's a clone, well, that goes back to something that I always thought should have happened with the Emperor, which is in some books and some comics, I think, where I think that the best way to approach Attack of the Clones would have been if Palpatine that you saw leading the Republic was a clone. And what you saw behind the scenes was Darth Sidious, the original, the evil one, kind of pulling the strings of what Palpatine, if you want to put quotes around it, was doing, because that would have started a clone war. That would have been an impetus for clones. You wouldn't know who to trust. You wouldn't know who's real and who's not, who's placed by the Empire, who's not.
Shane, that's a fantastic idea, my friend.
When it came through, and that
They should hire you over at Lucasfilm.
when none of that happened, I'm sitting there thinking, "Oh my God, what? They just missed the entire boat of what could have been the best part of Attack of the Clones and making the Clone Wars happen." And all you had is Yoda going, "Oh, these Clone Wars have started." And I'm like, "What? Are you kidding me?" Yeah, you got an army full of clones, but that doesn't mean anything. That gave no reason for Yoda to say that to Mace Windu and Obi-Wan at all to me. So that's part of my disappointment in Attack of the Clones. Is I really think they missed the boat in what they could have done.
Well, did you read the Dark Horse's first Star Wars offering 25 years ago, which I think was Dark? What was it called?
Dark
Empire.
Dark Empire.
Which was involved clones of Palpatine.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's a great story.
I just couldn't see why you wouldn't capitalize on that. But that's why we don't make the big bucks.
Yep.
But again,
minor quibbles.
It's Lucas doing what he wanted to do. That's the story he wanted to tell. I have no problems with that. It still made millions of dollars. We all went and saw it.
Mm-hmm. And now he's taken his couple $2 billion and gone into retirement, and some other people can
and
play
still
with the
came out
toys
with so many
and do it better.
Other great things, having a hand in Indiana Jones, making Skywalker sound and THX and all that. I mean, the man certainly did not just rest on his laurels of, all right, I made Star Wars, I'm rich. He's one
of the most important visionaries in the history of cinema. My God,
and continues to have this production facility that I can't imagine rivals most in Hollywood.
He showed up on the set of Solo and gave Ron Howard a couple of pointers, since Howard is an old protege of his, after all.
You can't. It just would be some great discussions to be able to sit in someday. If you could ever have just sat into Lucas telling Ron Howard what he thought, or what, oh God, so much fun to think about.
It would be cool.
Well, I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chris. I wasn't saying anything.
So I saw Ron Howard interviewed on Colbert, and he was talking about, how I was on American Graffiti and how, George Lucas was like a mentor. And then when he said Lucas came to the set, and he made some comments like, well, Han Solo would probably do it that way. And he was just talking about, just the sense of, in a very positive way, the sense of awe and responsibility. Mm-hmm. And then he flashed a picture on the screen of him and Lucas, kind of on the set, arm in arm, so to speak. And it was a great interview.
That's awesome. I know through this whole thing we got way off topic from just Solo, and even talked a little Star Trek, which is to some people. But man, what
this is our hill and our bean, Shane. Yeah. Don't forget that.
Too right it is.
What great discussions about the Star Wars universe.
What are our ratings, gentlemen? Freck and Swears?
I give it a 5.
Yeah, straight to 5 for me too.
A triumvirate, gentlemen. 5 for me as well.
Huzzah! Yes. You're a Star Wars fan. This movie is giving you the kind of fun you've been wanting in a Star Wars film-going experience for years.
Yeah.
All righty.
All right. So has all been said and done?
All has been said and done.
Indeed.
All right. Then let's also say and do this sponsorship announcement, reminding folks that this Solo movie review has been brought to you by the Collection Drawer Company, maker of Drawer Boxes, the easy-access storage solution. Revolutionize your comics collection today with Drawer Boxes. Go to collectiondrawer.com for details.
Visit us at comicgeekspeak.com. To send us an email, the address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. To leave a voicemail, the number is 267-702-6642. Stop by thecomicforums.vanillaforums.com and let us know what you think of Solo, a Star Wars story. I always want to call it Han Solo. I didn't like Solo, a Star Wars story at first, but that grew on me. Now I can't get it the other way around.
Just don't call it Han Solo.
Han. Oh, God. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. Thanks to everyone who contributes to the episodes in any way, shape, or form. We certainly appreciate it and couldn't do it without you. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes one listener at a time.